You are not broken. Your nervous system is just trying to protect you. And if you are one of those people going through this experience, there will be a point where you will be asking yourself a fundamental question. And that question is something wrong with me? And the answer to it is very simple. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. It's not a malfunction. It's a system that is actually doing what it has been designed to build. So in this video, we want to look at the mechanism behind it, because if you are analytically minded like myself, understanding the mechanism, the biology, and the science behind it will actually help you to settle the fear and surrender to the process. So let's look at it in more detail. There's one idea that's holding everything up. Your body has a system that is detecting threat, and it's actually doing its job. So the problem is not that the system is broken. The problem is that the system cannot switch off the alarm. And the system we are talking about here is the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system runs underneath conscious awareness and conscious control. It is responsible for regulating your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your hormones. And it's always asking one specific question. And that question is, am I safe? And there's two ways of looking at the autonomic nervous system. There is what I call the legacy way and what I call the new way. So according to the legacy way, the autonomic nervous system has got two branches, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. But according to the new way, and that is actually something that was proposed by Stephen Porges, who is a psychologist, he defined that there's actually three states of the autonomic nervous system, and he is looking at it from a different angle. So number one, ventral vagal, number two, sympathetic, and number three is the dorsal vagal. Ventral vagal is responsible for safety and connection, for thinking, resting, and being with people. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight or flight. And then the dorsal vagal, the oldest of the ones, is actually responsible for something more intense than fight or flight. It is responsible for shutdown. It's a collapse into numbness, into disconnecting you from your body in order to protect you. And something similar has actually been observed in animals as well. It was Peter Levine, who is the founder of somatic experiencing, who has actually discovered that animals like a bear in the wild, when they have a stressful event that has to go somewhere. So what they will do is, at first, they will actually go into a shutdown mode. But then eventually when threat passes, they will actually shake it out of their system and return back to normal. And there's another concept I would like to look at, and it is also defined by Stephen Porges, called neuroception. And that is the body's capability and awareness to read your environment constantly below your conscious awareness for safety. Am I actually safe in the environment that I'm in? And it's doing that by reading tone of voice, looking at faces, checking the room, and your own internal state. And so that system is actually running all the time in the background. So this is why you can feel unsafe when nothing is actually happening, because your body has already decided before your thinking mind has actually caught up, and you can't argue your way out of it. The second system that I want to look at is the HPA axis. And the HPA axis is responsible for releasing stress hormones in our body. You know, when there's acute stress, it works beautiful. Your cortisol is going up. You deal with a threat. The threat passes. Cortisol goes down again and you recover. But unfortunately, what this system was not built for is a situation where the cycle is not closing. The threat is not a lion, but it is just years of pressure. It's not a single event. It's a performance-driven life on top of stuff that was already held underneath and was stored in your body. So your cortisol level is elevated constantly, and your body is running in that state for years. And as a consequence, this is piling up and your system gets completely out of balance. So your immune system drops, you get ill more easily, your digestion changes, you notice changes in focus, you notice changes in sleep patterns, and that's because your HPA axis can also be reversed in a way. So obviously we reach out to the medical system for help, right? We believe something is fundamentally wrong with us. So a doctor might be able to help us and fix us. So obviously you seek out the medical system, and they actually tell you nothing is broken with you. Everything is fine. While you know what's happening from the inside, something is not right. So that is actually creating even more doubt in yourself. And you actually start analyzing yourself more. And this is actually making it worse because it's adding more threat to a system that's already completely in hypervigilance. And this dysregulation that was running for years is then pretty much what gets a label in the medical system, such as chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivities, burnout, just to name a few. And those labels are not wrong. That's not what I'm saying. They are just describing surface level symptoms of something that is happening with you, but it's not describing the actual root cause. And so unfortunately, there's another problem from my point of view in our medical system in the Western part of the world in particular. And that is that the medical system is kind of split into different areas. And each is looking at their own area. They are not looking at your body, especially not the body and the mind that are very interconnected. They are not looking at it holistically. They are just looking at surface level symptoms and are putting you into a category that fits the most. So that could be a psychologist, cardiologist, neurologist. They all look at it from their specific angle, and nothing is wrong about that. And what they are telling you is actually correct. The other thing I want to mention is that if you have one of those conditions, possibly, and you have severe symptoms, they are real. There's actual changes in your body that are taking place, and they are actually measurable. But the reason is a dysregulated nervous system that is flipping back and forth between states and is keeping you in a shutdown state for a long time as well, which explains why you have changes in how your body produces ATP, why you have changes in your sleep patterns, why you have changes in how your immune system works. All these kind of changes are downstream of a dysregulated nervous system. And another thing I want to mention is that the body is actually holding something that the body cannot reach. And what I mean by that is that we are possibly holding stress underneath that is covered up. And the third person I want to mention in here is Bessel van der Kolk, who has spent 40 years studying trauma. And his finding is actually the thesis of his book, and that is the body keeps the score. And he's saying that trauma is not stored as a story in your mind that you can recall. It is stored in the body as sensations and responses, like held breath, braced shoulders, flood of activation, or a drop in shutdown. And that actually also explains why you can get triggered by things you can't explain. A tone of voice, a smell, or a quality of light. The body reacts way before your mind actually has an idea. And your mind may think differently, but what is reacting is actually your body. So that is why you cannot reason your way out of it. It is really something somatic in your body that is happening. And you're actually not failing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just something through experience and through threat. Your whole configuration is misconfigured. So your activation that is held inside of the body is actually never completing, never resolving, like some animals have the capability of just shaking stress out of the system. It's just held underneath and is scarred over with defensive systems that will eventually break. And that is what many of us experience as a crash. when the defenses are no longer able to keep up, and suddenly that activation that was held underneath is rising to the surface. There is another concept that I want to look at, and that is that a system that has adapted into threat can also adapt back out of it. So wiring that has been built through years of experience can also be rewired through experience. And the reason for that, and the name of that concept, is called neuroplasticity. It's the brain's skill to change, to rewire neural pathways. So our brain is structured in neural pathways. And the more you practice those pathways, the more automatic they become, and they become subconscious. It's like learning to drive a car or playing an instrument. And a simple principle that you can remember that neurologists are using is neurons that fire together, wire together. So practice a pathway again and again, it gets faster and more automatic. And that's how you learn any new skill, essentially. And there is some good news and some bad news about it. The good news is that the same mechanism that has built and got you there can also be unbuilt, right? The bad part about it is that it explains why your symptoms haven't faded yet, because that pathway is just being kept alive. And I'd like you to picture two trenches in a sand, one that is huge and dug over decades, and water is pouring through it, and that's your pathway of threat, vigilance, and protection. And then there is a new one that is much smaller, and it's just a trickle of water. And that's our new pathway, the pathway of safety, connection, and ease. And recovery doesn't mean smashing the old trench. That's not possible. It means repeated exposure and repeated experiences to make the small pathway just bigger. So the brain that learns threat can also learn safety. And that is not optimism or positive thinking. It's just the concept of neuroplasticity. And that's the reason why we can actually recover. So let's be honest. Nothing about your symptoms will change when you're watching this. Your activation will not stop. Your racing mind doesn't quiet just because you know the name of the HPA axis or you know the Polyvagal theory. But something else is changing, and that's quite important. Your relationship to it, how you read what is happening. And that is actually the difference between being in a storm and believing it is reality, or being in a storm and knowing it is just weather passing through a sky. So when fear floods in a safe room, that's an old pathway firing, not the truth in that moment. So creating that distance to it and being the observer is what actually loses a bit of the grip. So the one sentence to take away is your brain is not broken, your body is not broken. It just learned what it was taught. And its only way of doing this, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to protect you from threat. And unfortunately, it was misconfigured into believing something is threat that actually isn't. And that is a result of acute stress, long-lasting stress that is stored in your body. So if anything in this video resonated with you, I would like to hear in the comments below. And if you want to see future content and don't miss any new videos, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.